Hey, what is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Read Report. I am your host, Nicole Ryan, and I don't know about you guys, but I cannot wait to get to the bottom of this retrial. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe this is all happening again. And it's interesting to see how Hank Brennan's case against Karen Reed is differing from Adam Lowley's case the first time around. What has made the Commonwealth's case a little more easy to follow? Again, not sending Karen Reed away because it's so damning, but it's been a little bit more of an easier watch, in my opinion, even though we know some of the witness testimonies that we're going to hear. We know some of the evidence that is going to be shown. But what we are getting for the first time in this retrial is some of Karen Reed's own words being used against her, weaponized against her, because it's fair game, in the sense that when the defendant goes on the record, there's an active case going on, you can use those words against them, even if the defendant themselves has no plans of actually taking the stand, which we doubt Karen Reed will actually face the jury. But what will the jurors think if they're saying, hey, she's all right with running her mouth in these different interviews, but she won't get up there on the stand and talk to us, tell us what happened? Interesting, right? So will that help her? Will that hurt her? Are these statements super damning, or are they somewhat trivial? Do they suggest that maybe what the defense is alleging perhaps did happen, or the opposite? Do they paint an unflattering picture of Karen Reed? Do they highlight the inconsistencies and her disregard and contempt for certain people involved in the case? And therefore, do they just paint this unflattering, unlikable picture of her? What do you guys think? And have you seen any of these clips? If you have, what are the most controversial ones? What are the ones that stick out to you the most? Drop some thoughts in the comments. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe as per usual. Let's get into it. So our first clip that I want to show you is the first that Hank Brennan, the prosecutor in this case, showed the jury when it comes to Karen Reed's own words. This is clip 1, which was used in the opening statements by the prosecution.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in his drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
So there's the first clip that the jury got to see on the first day of trial that Hank Brennan introduced for them, that we're able to see at home, is from a Dateline interview that Karen Reed gave about the case. In it, you can see that Karen Reed is recalling what she initially thought when she realized that John O'Keefe was dead, or at least he was dying, and she was the last one who presumably saw him. She was wondering. She admits, I did think maybe I hit him. Could I have hit him? Could I have clipped him? She says, could I have clipped him in the leg or something like that? He's presumably somewhere in the vicinity of where I left him. Maybe I did hit him. So that's clip number 1. Again, not particularly damaging. Does it hurt her? Does it help her? I don't know. Is it interesting that Hank Brennan felt the need to use that in opening statements? Yeah. Now, what we're not seeing in that clip is the context that Karen Reed made this statement, because the greater context suggests an entirely different reason. Her context of this clip was her kind of discussing the game plan after they found John O'Keefe's body. She apparently was talking to her lawyer, David Yannetti, and was saying, well, if I did hit him, it was an accident, but would I still be culpable? And he assured her, yeah, Karen, actually, you would still have to pay some sort of price for this because accident or no accident, your boyfriend's dead and you were behind the wheel and you seemingly had something to drink that night. So there's that. And then Karen, in the context of realizing, oh, I would still be somewhat culpable, at least it seems, based on the interview, that is what formulated this defense strategy that suggested that something completely different happened to John O'Keefe that night. Perhaps John O'Keefe got into a physical altercation that left him dead. And it also, or dying. And it also shows that Karen Reed, she says, when she initially saw John, he didn't look mortally wounded. Now, this statement is unique because I think it somewhat contradicts other statements about John's condition the morning that they found him. Some say that it looked like he had done some rounds with Tyson. They said his body looked terrible. He was quite visibly destroyed. So it starkly contrasts some other statements that suggest that John's body was mauled or beaten, and instead suggests that it looks like maybe something happened that was kind of an accident. That's what Karen is saying, or what she seems to allude to in that clip. So that one's interesting. That was the first glimpse into Karen Reed that the jurors got. Now, the next one is even more interesting because it goes back to the I hit him, I hit him, I hit him statement that several witnesses reported hearing Karen Reed say the morning that they found John O'Keefe passed out in front of the house at 34 Fairview Road. So, what did Karen Reed make or think about her own statements suggesting, could I have hit him? Or if she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. This one, I think, is particularly interesting.
We can put it on a zip drive. We can discuss collecting. And call Ms.
okay.
Roberts.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ron.
Every day they come back to you with something. I mean, how much do you remember?
I remember it, but I questioned do I remember it because it's been relived so much. I mean, when I see the video of me driving from the waterfall, like what I just described, tapping the brakes when I crossed the intersection, Washington over Sherman Street, do I actually remember that I kind of slowly proceeded through that green light? No, I don't actually remember that. But I've seen the video so many times that you then question, did I remember on my own? Or was my memory jogged? But I also wondered, did I say, could I have hit him? Or was it told to me that I said I hit him? And I knew I never could have said that, so the closest I must have said was, did I hit him? I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement is claiming I said it?
Now, this statement definitely took me a little bit by surprise because the defense has argued on multiple occasions that this I hit him, I hit him, I hit him statement was never framed that way. They argue that their client, Karen Reed, was questioning, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? That she never, in fact, made these outright, potentially incriminating statements saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, even though multiple witnesses have testified that they heard her say that the morning that John O'Keefe was found. So her admitting in this interview seemingly that she knew that she said, I hit him. It definitely raises some questions in my mind because of how aggressively the defense has been attacking anyone who has made any admission of this kind, that Karen Read said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Because if you recall, they suggested that Katie McLaughlin essentially enhanced her testimony. And I know that that's their job to say, hey, wait, actually, did our client actually do this? Did our client actually say this? Their job is to poke holes. Their job is to question the prosecution's case and to plant tiny seedlings of reasonable doubt. And they do their job well. I don't think there's any doubt. But it is interesting that publicly, the narrative that they have been pushing is that Karen Read never said I hit him. Anybody who said that because they either were covering for the Albert family or they somehow knew the Albert family and they needed to have someone on the record saying, I hit him, is what Karen Read said. Now, what is this? Does this mean that Karen Read was actually saying, I know I said I hit him, about could I have hit him? Did I hit him? She didn't mean to say, I know I said I hit him. Maybe some people will argue that. I don't know. But the fact that she's on the record stating, I know I said I hit him, in my mind, raises some questions about what the defense has said about these statements and in their questioning of witnesses coming forward with these statements in the months and weeks following the death of John O'Keefe and in the subsequent trials. So anyways, let's get into another clip that I think was particularly damaging to Karen Read and really raises some questions in my mind, at least, about potentially her realization that something's up here. She might not have remembered hitting him if she did hit him, but she knew that she was going to be pursued as a potential suspect, seemingly, based on this next clip here. Now, in this clip, you'll hear Karen Read talking about her suggesting that pieces of her taillight are missing and that she actually potentially placed some of those pieces somewhere.
When my car was seized, there was a few small pieces of taillight missing that I had picked out at John's at 5:45 before we drove over to Fairview. I'm showing Terry, look what I just did to my light, and I'm worried that there's gonna be some kind of electric short circuit. There's the bulb is showing, and some of the red plastic's missing. So I picked pieces out of the light housing that had kind of collapsed within the light and dropped them in John's driveway.
I'd like to have that marked as an exhibit.
I almost had to play that one back because this is the first time I've heard anything like that, suggesting that not only did Karen Read say that she thinks that her taillight got damaged when she was backing out of John's driveway and struck into John's vehicle, but she says that she actually placed pieces of her own taillight in John's driveway. And isn't it interesting that we have on video Karen Read leaving John's driveway and seemingly making contact with his vehicle. We have that on video, and the defense has raised that as the reason why Karen Read's taillight was damaged. But we don't have Karen Reed returning to John's house from 34 Fairview Road. That Ring video footage, which seemingly the Ring camera was working, if it did in fact capture Karen Reed backing in to John O'Keefe's vehicle, then why is that particular piece of Ring camera footage missing when she actually returned, which therefore would have potentially proven either, yes, she did strike him, and her taillight was already damaged when she came back from dropping him off at 34 Fairview Road. That's missing, but the footage of her backing into John's car is conveniently there. And she also says that she planted some of her own pieces of taillight in the driveway. Almost a cover your bum sort of move. Suggesting that maybe she knew they were going to be coming for her and she knew she had to cover her tracks. That's peculiar to me, for sure. Does it prove that she did it beyond a reasonable doubt? No. But it definitely suggests some sort of thinly veiled attempt to potentially cover her own tracks. And she doesn't stop talking about the taillight. There's also another clip of her discussing her fears that Peggy O'Keefe, John's mother, would suspect Karen Reed of playing a role in John O'Keefe's death because of her taillight damage. Let's see what she had to say about this.
They had pulled into the driveway before me, so I was presuming she saw my cracked taillight and was thinking, did you hit my son? I could sense from her that she was looking at me very warily. And then when John's nephew came home, I just wanted to see him and squeeze him and hug him. It was quite uncomfortable. I said, Dad, come upstairs to the master bedroom. I said, I think I need to leave. I said, I think John's mother thinks I did something to John.
So there you have it. Karen Reed, in her own words, immediately feared that Peggy O'Keefe, John's mother, was suspecting her. Peggy O'Keefe could have seen Karen Reed's vehicle with a damaged taillight at John's house that morning. And so maybe Peggy O'Keefe did suspect her. And that's not the only comment that Karen Reed made about Peggy O'Keefe, John's mom, which was shown to the jury. She also made another comment, and this one, perhaps, was a little bit less flattering, in my opinion.
And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, I think it looks like he got hit by a car. It looks like he got hit by a car.
Now, that one the defense had tried to prevent from being allowed in for the jurors to see because they didn't like Karen Reed's tone in it. It wound up being allowed anyways, but you can tell why, because she's mocking, essentially, John O'Keefe's mother, Peggy O'Keefe, and imitates her voice. The day that John O'Keefe died describes how Peggy O'Keefe was suspecting, maybe even going so far to accuse Karen Reed from the get-go, saying, I think it looked like he got hit by a car. Now, that is why Karen would say that she didn't stick around or really try to have any sort of relationship with John O'Keefe's family after that, because she knew how Peggy O'Keefe felt. She knew that Peggy O'Keefe was suspecting her. But again, how's the jury going to take this? They saw Peggy O'Keefe testify. What will they make of Karen Reed herself mocking her boyfriend of 2 years' mom? And is that exactly what prosecutor Hank Brennan is going for? Does he want them to feel a certain type of way, even though they shouldn't be deliberating based off emotion? Perhaps he wants to paint this picture of Karen Reed. Now let's get into the next clip here. Karen Reed, in her various media interviews, has given multiple different versions or recollections of just how much she had to drink that night that she dropped off John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview Road. Was it 1? Was it 2? Was it 3? Was it 4? Was it more? Let's see what she has to say about exactly how many drinks she had that night and whether or not she thought she was okay to drive.
When you walked out of the bar, how many drinks had you had?
I had probably about 4, and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
And 4 drinks you felt fine to drive?
Yep.
Clip 8, please.
And is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's,
You had a lot.
I wouldn't say, I had like a normal amount. Like a vodka tonic every 40 minutes.
Okay. And so are you feeling like buzzed? And I'm not judging, I'm just trying to get a sense.
Buzzed.
Yeah.
Clip 9, please.
The final count summers. The final count of my alcohol intakes, probably about 5 or 6 or 4. The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. It tasted just like old soda water with lime. Not that I need it to be a martini, but it might have had a splash of vodka in it. So I said, John, this drink tastes like it has no vodka in it. He said, just get a shot and mix it yourself. So each drink was being counted as a double. So I would get a vodka tonic and then I would pour a shot into it. So that would count as 2. Frankly, it just felt like a regular cocktail. It was just a really weak pour. So I asked for a shot. So for my taste, it just tasted like that's the normal strength of what a drink should be. So I had maybe 2 or 3 that are being counted as 4 and 6. And I don't know. I felt fine. I felt like I was buzzed. And then there was one drink, the last one that was given to me, which I would have counted as 3, but they're counting as my 6th cocktail. The guys that we were with brought around the shots, and they gave me one that I didn't drink, but I poured it in my drink. So that's now my 5th and 6th drinks, with the 7th, which is a shot that all the men did, and I poured it. So that one glass that I'm holding, that I go into the waterfall with, has 3 drinks in it, a vodka tonic and 2 shots. And which is why John said to me, you're not leaving that drink here, like you haven't touched it and just poured a bunch of vodka. He's like, just take it with you, which was something he always did. So then I go into waterfall and I put that drink down and I socialize most of the time. So that would have been my 5th, 6th, and 7th drinks. Then John orders me a drink at the waterfall that I don't drink, that he takes with him. And then there was a round of shots that Chris Howard bought that I did take. So that would have been the night. But I did not consume 9 vodka martinis or take 9 shots, depending on how you count it. And the last 2 drinks. I didn't touch.
So there you have it, folks. How much did Karen Reed have to drink that night? Probably about 4, but not 4 that she completely finished. Probably a vodka tonic every 40 minutes or so. Probably a few, maybe 9, depending on how you look at it, but that wasn't 9 separate vodka sodas. That was just a couple of drinks mixed together to equal the normal strength, because you gotta pour 'em heavy for Karen Reed's liking, apparently. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think at one point or another, people all have a little bit too much to drink, you know? But I do think that, certainly in the eyes of the law, there's a general consensus around what constitutes one drink. And regardless of whether or not she was drinking mixed drinks with shots in them, that doesn't really mean that that single drink, which has shots mixed into it, still is technically just one drink. I mean, the math ain't mathin', Karen. And I bet your defense attorneys are cringing when these clips are played at times, while you seemingly have no regrets about telling your story and sharing your recollection of what happened that night. Ultimately, it's not up to how you feel about it. It's going to be up to these jurors and what they have to say about it. Does it prove that you hit John with your vehicle, resulting in his death? Does it prove that you intended to strike and kill John and leave him out in that snowstorm? No. But does it look good? Do people really know how much you had to drink, and is that still contestable? Not so sure. So there are those clips. And then she even goes so far as to describe why she felt okay to drive that night and what exactly that means to her.
I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I mean, I had drank, so, and that led me to question, like, could I have hit him? Did I run over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him? I mean, I always drive with my music blasting ever since I was 16. And I know when John got out of the car to go into Fairview, I know my car was blasting because when I got in it the next morning to go look for him, I had to immediately turn it down. And I don't know, it's stormy. I have had a few cocktails. I didn't black out, but I wasn't as lucid as I would have been if I had gone to bed at 9 and drank a tea. But so I was fuzzier than I would have been if I had no alcohol.
Clip 11, please.
How did you feel after that many minutes? When you got in the car, did you feel like you could drive, and did you feel how
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway. I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet. The roads were very quiet. You can see it on the videos. And I was going, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always drive extra slow. So I know my alerts aren't as sharp as they should be. But I shouldn't have been driving. But I don't think I was driving. I know I wasn't driving recklessly. I mean, I've got plenty of video of myself driving all over the place. I put my car in John's garage, which is incredibly narrow, and I have had a very oversized SUV. You see me, there's a video of me driving through the intersection when we leave Waterfall to go to Brian Albert's, and I was always taught by my father, even when you have a green light, you always should tap the brake. You don't know who's going to run red. And I see me doing that multiple times between 12 and 1 and 5 and 6 a.m. So I know I was driving safely, not as safely or as alert as I would be if I had no alcohol. But I was not driving recklessly by any measure.
So, yeah, Karen, that is generally speaking how it works. You usually aren't as fuzzy as you would be if you had only drank some tea that night. Generally, alcohol does tend to make you, or people in general, just a little bit fuzzy sometimes, especially if it's consumed in rather large quantities. But again, what's large, what's small, that's apparently up for debate as well. Come on, I gotta roast her a little bit here, guys. It's kind of funny. And then this other clip here that we just saw, this most recent one, in that one, she's saying, I probably shouldn't have been driving, but I definitely wasn't driving recklessly. I mean, there are some videos of me driving all over the place, and I wouldn't have gone on the expressway, but, the roads were pretty quiet out there, and you can see when I go through the intersection that I put my foot on the brakes because that's what my father told me to do, because you never know who might be running the red light. But then in a separate clip, she's actually questioning, did I put my foot on the brake because my dad told me not to run the red lights? Or my dad told me that somebody's always going to run a red light? Is that why I did it? She questions her own recollection of these various events because she has been so heavily involved in her own case. She's looked at the state's case against her multiple times. She's worked on her own defense strategy. And it's been a while since this incident actually occurred, and she admittedly was fuzzy when it actually happened. So I can understand why your memory might be a little bit fuzzy. And I would like to say that if Karen's admitting her memory is fuzzy, then perhaps other people, other witnesses, whose statements may or may not have been inconsistent in their various testimonies for this case, maybe, perhaps, that their memory is a little bit clouded as well. After all, a lot of the folks who were witnesses in the state's case were drinking themselves. So, all to say, I can understand why some people's recollection, Karen's included, of these different events and their testimonies, retroactively speaking, it's the year 2025. They've had multiple testimonies at this point. The witnesses in this case, of course, there's a lot of room for error, and it's been years. It's been since 2022 since this incident actually happened. And a lot of them were admittedly drinking. So I can understand why things are confusing, which again further conflates the many issues in this case, because what is fact and what is a memory? So one of the things that the state, in honestly just the whole motion that now, one of the things that I think some of the clips of Karen Read have raised or potentially suggested as potential motive. Now, I know motive is extremely, extremely cloudy in this case because, in my opinion, there really isn't any intent. But if there were, I think these next clips might point to what the intent, if any, potentially was. Let's get into it.
How did you feel after that many drinks? When you got in the car, did you feel like you could drive, and did you feel how
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway. I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet. The roads were very quiet. You can see it on the videos. And I was going, you know, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always drive extra slow. So I know my alert. Two things. Either he's hurt himself and he's incapacitated. He could be passed out on someone's couch, which is just weird. We're not on a campus. Everyone lives in their own home with children, or he's sleeping with someone. And there were multiple women in the neighborhood of Fairview that John had been with. And one of them very recently, before I started dating John.
Clip 16, please.
We'll backtrack later. Let's start at 34 Fairview. So who are you with?
I'm with Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts, and Carrie Roberts is Ford Explorer. And I'm in the back, leaning over the front two seats. Carrie's driving and Jen's in the passenger seat. And I describe this to everyone, so you've probably heard this before, but John looked like a buffalo on the prairie. It was just a lawn and a heat that it wasn't a bush or a hydrant or a dog. It was a weird shaped lump at that time in those elements. And I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him. And the fear of what I was going to see is the worst feeling I've ever experienced. The anticipation of what is awaiting me was as extreme a feeling. I wouldn't say it was as extreme a feeling as the grief of realizing what happened to him.
And finally, clip 17, please.
There was a woman who was a mother to kids that were close to John's kids, who lived very close to the outlets. In fact, when Jen was navigating John to the outlets when I was driving, she said it's near Ashley's house. Ashley and John were hooked up prior to John and I dating.
So I alluded to how those clips that I just played would suggest some sort of motive. I didn't say it was a good motive or a strong motive, and I didn't say all of them explicitly would prove motive, because, just to clarify, they don't. But what I think they do suggest to the jury and to all of us listening is that perhaps there was some jealousy there. There definitely were some issues in that relationship, and that's something that we know from the last trial was raised particularly in the Aruba incident. Now, the Aruba incident is not going to be introduced in this case at all, to my knowledge. At least the prosecution said that they don't plan to use that. But in the Aruba incident, which was mentioned during the first trial, we hear that allegedly John O'Keefe was seen canoodling or kissing, or at the very minimum acknowledging this other girl on this trip to Aruba, who was a family friend, he said. But Karen Reed didn't like what she saw in that interaction, and she actually cussed out this girl because it looked like she was getting a little too friendly with her boy. So we definitely have heard some potential evidence that suggests there were some issues in this relationship between Karen and John. And we know that a lot of women have dated John because a lot of ex-girlfriends have come out of the woodwork in the media frenzy surrounding this case. We know that John has had several girlfriends, and that's not illegal. Good for John. Apparently, he was somewhat of a ladies' man. But Karen seemingly did not care for this aspect of John and was potentially sensitive to the fact that other women in that neighborhood, 34 Fairview Road, specifically one other woman in particular, this woman named Ashley, who was a friend of John's and evidently also an ex-flame, they had some sort of recent fling, according to Karen, soon before John and Karen started dating. And it's not only that that happened, and we're also learning that on the drive over, Jennifer McCabe, who was helping John and Karen find her sister's house at 34 Fairview Road that night, that Karen Reed says she left John O'Keefe there, she alluded to Ashley, that woman, ex-Flame's house, when giving Karen and John directions to her sister's house. So, could that have been the potential thinly veiled motive? Could that have initiated a fight or a disagreement in that car, therefore causing Karen Reed to slip into this rage? And it definitely was a rage, because we hear some voicemails that Karen Reed left on John's phone that night. She called him dozens of times. Now, the voicemails, I would say, probably suggest the opposite, because if this is supposed to suggest motive, then the voicemails don't really sound like someone who just struck and intentionally hit her boyfriend. They sound more like somebody frazzled and ticked at their partner. And they do make some reference to, John, you're out there cheating on me, you're using me, you're a pervert. These are all things that Karen Reed said in those voicemails. So again, they're not the most flattering. Does it prove that Karen Reed, in her drunken rage, struck and killed John O'Keefe? No. Does it prove that they even had an argument in the vehicle that night or outside the vehicle that night? No, it doesn't. But altogether, it does suggest some inconsistencies in that perhaps their relationship wasn't as happy as other bar goers at the different bars that night testified that it seemed. And then she also makes reference like, this is somebody suggesting that John in his drunken stupor just crashed on somebody's couch in the neighborhood. She's quickly dispelling that. This is not a dorm situation. This is not college. Well, you're all drinking like it's college, seemingly. But anyways. And we also hear a little bit about how it seems like Karen Reed was actually not surprised to find John O'Keefe on the lawn that morning, something which both Carrie Roberts and Jeffrey McCabe have suggested. She knew exactly, as they say, where John's body was, even though it didn't look obviously like a body to the others. Why was that? Well, then we have Karen Reed in her own words now saying that I was expecting to find him. And I was anticipating that fear and that dread of actually finding him there. Well, everyone else pretty much said that it looked like a lump of snow. It didn't look like a body. So how would Karen have known that she was going to find him? Certainly a little bit suspicious. And she doesn't just stop there. There are a couple other clips that Hank Brennan shows the jurors in this trial about Karen's state of mind or her recollection of what may have happened that night. Let's dive into the next ones.
I gave an interview with ABC with Matt Gutman. I think this was whom I gave the interview to, and I said, he asked, why was I saying, could I hit him, did I hit him? And I said, yeah, my first thought was, I've been out late, I've been drinking, and he's in the general vicinity of where I last saw him. I mean, they talk about the left side of the property and the right as if it's, Hammersmith Farms. It's a postage stamp. It's 50 feet. So he's in the front yard to the left of the front door, and no one's coming out of the house. Jen's telling me nobody's seen him. So I'm thinking, Jesus, was I starting to pull away and I ran over his foot? Like, he's roughly where I left him. So yeah, when I found him, I was thinking, did I clip him somehow?
So, what's interesting about that clip? Well, again, it suggests that Karen Reed did wonder if perhaps she did actually hit him. She also states that John was roughly where she left him. Now, this is somewhat inconsistent because at other times she said that she saw John going into the house. So, which is it? Did you think you left him right outside, right next to the lawn? Or did you think you left him while he was actively going into the house? And Karen Reed apparently initially told investigators that she never saw him go in the house. So I think, again, it points to these little droplings that suggest that even Karen Reed has no idea what actually went down that night. Now, does it prove anything? No. But it certainly suggests state of mind and her potentially consciousness of guilt. And then the last clip I'll show you guys talks about what John may have had with him that night. When Karen says she left him at 34 Fairview Road.
When you walked out of the bar, how many drinks had you had?
I had probably about 4, and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
And 4 drinks you felt fine to drive?
Yep.
Clip 8, please.
And is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's,
You'd have
so when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder.
So, in that clip, Karen Reed claims that John O'Keefe, as he got out of her car at the house at 34 Fairview Road, she claims that John took with him the vodka soda that she had in her cup holder. He definitely took that drink with him. Now, why is that significant? Is it significant? Well, it's significant because part of that drinking glass was found on the lawn at 34 Fairview Road. Some of the glass that was recovered from the scene, I will say, did not match the glass, but some did. And also on that lawn, or in that general vicinity of the lawn, was a straw. So, does that dispel that John never went in the house? Does that dispel the theory that John could have gone in the house? No. But does it really make sense that John, if he did in fact step out of the car with that vodka soda in hand, would he really have gone in and then gone out with that glass still in hand? Would he have gone in the house and still wound up with that glass? I don't know. And this is all by Karen Reed's own omissions. She's making all these statements. And yet, she probably will not take the stand because it generally speaking, never works in the defendant's favor. It goes against, most lawyers will tell you, no, don't take the stand. It's not a good look, usually, right? But she's certainly not shying away from talking about this case to the media. Again, to be clear, none of this proves anything. And some of it, I'll say, maybe it doesn't paint her in such a terrible light, and maybe it doesn't prove, oh yes, she did it. Maybe there's some little hints of sympathy or some little hints of she genuinely had no intention of doing this. Yeah, I could see those arguments, but ultimately, does it make her look good? Would her lawyers advise her to do that? To make all these statements, even though they know that can be used against her? Probably not. But none of that really matters. How the jury perceives it is going to be what's key here. What will they make of these different statements by Karen Reed? Will it bother them that she's not going to be taking the stand, but she'll talk to all these different media outlets? Do they think that she's not a very likable person? Is that going to affect their deliberations? Even though technically it shouldn't be something that they're using in their deliberations, but we're all human. We all judge sometimes, right? What do you guys think? Drop some comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to smash the like button, hit that subscribe. Follow me on Spotify, on YouTube. Make sure you are keeping up with our TikTok and the Instagram as well at The Read Report. Hope you guys have a fabulous week. I cannot wait to see how these remaining weeks unfold. We'll be here to capture it all. And until next time, remember, stay curious, keep questioning, and take everything with a grain of salt.